All right, so here we are coming into round 4, and I got paired against an old friend, a guy that I have not seen in at least a decade. And then I looked to see who my pairing was, and I was like, I think I know that guy. And sure enough, I did. And so it was nice to reconnect with a friend. Somehow that kind of felt like it took a little bit of pressure off of me. We're rated almost exactly the same, so it should be a pretty even matchup. And we hadn't played in a really long time, so I was pretty curious. Anyway, let's dive into the game and take a look at it. So I had the black pieces, of course, as is obvious. And he hits out with e4. Of course, we go for the Caro-Kann. And we take, and he takes here, and I feel pretty good because I really like the exchange Caro-Kann. And then he plays c4, and I feel less good because I like the Panov less. But I'm prepared. I'm okay with it. It's not like I don't know what I'm doing. I just don't find the resulting positions as interesting as some of the other lines of the Caro-Kann. So knight f6, we get knight c3, just standard development. And now this a6 move, which is part of the ChessGoals repertoire. And I really kind of like it because what happened in this game is what happens in every game. They start to think immediately. I mean, he told me he's been playing the Panov against the Caro for basically his whole chess career. And he said he had never seen this a6 move and was immediately on his own. He chose to capture, which for me, I find to be sort of the most obnoxious line. I prefer the lines where they play c5, or maybe they bring the bishop out immediately, and we get this kind of weird stuff. But leaving this tension, after the capture, and then of course we take back with a knight, I feel less, I don't know, these are just less fun for me. Bishop e6, of course, and we're threatening to take and hit the queen and the bishop at the same time. And he told me after the game that he very nearly just castled, which walks directly into it. One thing to note is this is not a concern at all because we can just play knight takes c3. And the critical line is if they grab here, we can just grab this, they grab, and this just becomes a fun way to just keep capturing. They got to take back. And in the end, well, actually, they can't even take back there because that's a big problem. They got to play d5, kicking our knight, and then they can capture. Otherwise, if they capture the knight, then we take here, and we just pick up the bishop. So this is totally happy with this kind of a situation if this plays out. Instead, he played queen to e2. And now I am a little bit worried about this because things are a wee bit different because the bishop is defended, and I don't really know what's going to happen here. I can play g6 and just allow this, but I suppose the point is now I have knight takes d4. I'm defending this guy. This is a little bit tricky looking because he captures here. And I suppose, yeah, this doesn't appeal to me. This doesn't make me want to like write home to mom about my position. But I didn't want to go for something like this. Apparently the engine's like, no, dude, it's cool, go for it. But instead I decided to change the position. And I thought this queen move was a bit slow and that I was going to be able to equalize and get a nice game. So I took, he took, and I took here, and he took, and then we play e6. I would like to play g6 to put the bishop on the long diagonal, but after d5, and the knight has to move somewhere, I mean, I don't really want to move here, because now, like, queen d4, and I've got to play this sort of annoying move, or this one. Like, it's just a bit slow to play g6, and that's pretty common when you've delayed, and white has had a chance to develop, that you don't really have time to get away with this g6 maneuver, especially when they're going to castle. Here, apparently I can, but I don't like it. So e6, just trying to hold back from d5. And I thought he's already spent 1-2 moves with the queen. Eventually, I'm going to play rook c8, and I'm going to probably play this at some point, and he's going to have to spend another tempo on the queen. And while this isn't like the most exciting position, neither player is probably going to get checkmated. It's just a dead equal position. And I feel like that some of the extra exchanges of minor pieces should give black an advantage. Because the c6 pawn, or sorry, not c6, but c3, as long as I can make sure that this pawn never comes to c4, I should have a pretty solid game. So queen, bishop to g5, slightly annoying, because I had kind of hoped to be able to put my queen out here maybe, or maybe to c7, and establish the bishop on e6. And I still looked at doing this, maybe even trying to play queen d5, but I kind of decided that I really can't just leave this bishop here. It's kind of annoyingly strong. So I decided, okay, fine, let's trade again. And again, I should be happy with trades because these pawns are going to be weak with more trades. This is a really related pawn structure to the isolated queen pawn. And of course, if you're the side with the isolated queen pawn, you want to keep as many pieces on the board as possible. So while I don't think I have any huge advantage, I do think I have a little bit of a tug, and I definitely think that I'm no worse. I was concerned of the lack of pieces in front of my king, that maybe some sort of idea like this might be potentially a little bit scary, but he castles, I castled, and now he brings the rook in. He's threatening now d5 again, so I decided I wanted to shut that down. So I brought this guy over, and now the knight comes in. And again, I don't want to trade and allow this pawn to here. It's probably fine. I mean, I'm certain it's fine. But I suppose he can also take with the rook. This has got to be also fine. But I just decided that I didn't need to be the one to hurry here, and I just brought in the other rook. And now I'm ready to gain this tempo, establish a knight on c4. I don't want to rush with b4, or sorry, b5, because then I think a4 is going to happen, and they take, and maybe they're going to get some pressure here. So one of my big sticks is that I want to put pressure on c3 as quickly as possible without giving white their own target. And I think that by holding back this b5 pawn, I make this a4 break sort of less useful. Anyway, queen to b3 was played, and I went knight to a5 anyway. It's a nice dual-purpose move because I wanted to play here at any point. The knight also defends here. It defends the c4 square, and here I'm actually hitting the queen as well. So I thought this was another queen tempi that he really couldn't justify, but apparently the engine thought that it was the only thing he could do. Probably not going to make that much of a difference. I mean, for example, you play the natural-looking queen move here. Well, now I have this threat. So he did have to do something there. So queen b3, knight a5, and now queen to b3. I had really thought about playing this move. But again, I was lightly concerned about this knight and the queen coming over to this side, but that's not going to happen now because that's why I expected like queen to d3 earlier to try to bring the queen across, lift the rook, and try to attack here. But there is kind of still a threat, and I didn't want to bring my queen all the way away. I do, of course, have to defend the knight. I didn't really want to play knight to c4. I mean, it's probably fine, but like captures. I should be happy with this, but wasn't feeling too great about it. But instead, I chose to play queen to c7. The one interesting thing to note is if I do play this move, white does have this sacrifice. And if I capture it, this is a big problem. By a big problem, I mean a huge problem, because rook to e5, I don't know how to stop this. This rook can come across. Again, we see why I wanted to leave some pieces on the king side. I didn't see this express line, but I think my general sentiment that my king was a bit bare and I shouldn't totally ignore it kind of helped me not play this queen a3 move. So I was happy to not fall for that. So instead I played queen to c7. And now white's basically forced to trade the queens, which I really don't think they wanted to do at all. They definitely, I think, wanted to keep the queens on. But if you leave the queens on, you're going to lose the c-pawn. So we take, and here it comes across. And now I played rook to c8. Again, I don't want to let this pawn go. And now white's stuck in a passive position. I really don't need to worry about much of anything. The only thing I was even slightly concerned about was that at some point might be able to establish the knight here, and then it would be difficult for me to get pressure against the c3 pawn. He never really has tempi to do that. Plays rook e3, trying to defend the pawn. And I really considered playing this move f6, just to try to kick the knight away. It can't still go here because that drops a pawn. And if the knight's forced to come back this way, I thought I could play king f7, defend this pawn. This knight's not really involved anymore, and I can establish the knight on c4, which is really kind of what I wanted. I didn't want to trade every piece because I didn't think that I could pull off anything there. But I was a little bit nervous about playing f6 because I thought e6 might become a target. Like maybe he just abandons the c-pawn and goes for all-out counterplay. And I thought that was a possibility. I didn't think I needed to do that yet. So after rook e3, I did choose to play knight to c4, takes, and now my plan is simple. I want to come here. Note that a4 is no longer a possibility since I have the rook on c4. And then I just want to play b4 and win the pawn and see what happens. It's as good a plan as any. I also have this nice side threat of rook takes d4 and you get mated. or win a pawn, one of the two. So rook d3 is kind of forced. And now I played rook to a4. And my idea was that I thought it'd be cool if I could establish the knight on a3 because it's touching this pawn and touching this pawn. And then I thought I can advance here and then maybe bring the king over, get my king a bit better position, continue maneuvering around, and eventually try to exploit the weakness in some way. He played rook to d2, and now I played b5. Again, threatening b4, and now a3 is not possible. I didn't want to allow a3 because I thought if a3 happens, it's going to be hard for me to play b4, but maybe it doesn't matter because I can always play a5 and then a4. I'm going to get it eventually anyway. So he played king f1, but now this lets me swing back to c4, and he doesn't have time for a3 because I'm attacking this pawn. So he hit me with d5, and this was a little bit of a tricky move. On the one hand, I really wanted to play e5 because I thought this pawn's totally isolated and certainly going to lose this pawn, right? But maybe d6 happens. I can play king to f8. But now, like say, rook d3, defending this guy. I got to play f6 so I can try to bring the king out. But, you know, d7, rook d8. This rook comes here. I play king to e7. And I suppose this is probably okay. I mean, it's definitely okay. I guess I'm just going to come back here, try to win the pawn. But, you know, rook d6 comes, and it's not quite so easy to see how I'm going to win this pawn for sure. Of course, white can't really do anything either. I mean, rook to a4, say maybe this just comes across. I suppose I can take this now. This, okay. All right. You've convinced me. Oh, not here, because then we get a check. I want to win this some other way. I'm going to come up here and win this pawn. This would have perhaps been a way to go. But I thought that he had sort of a clever idea that he was going for, and I thought I had calculated a way that it wasn't so clever. So I played here, and my thinking was that after it takes, I can grab this, and I thought his plan was to do this idea, because I can't bring the rook back, but I can just bring this rook back, and everything's all hunky-dory. I'm just up a clean rook. So I thought this was kind of his idea. So I played here. And then he brought the second rook across. And I still thought this was his idea. So I captured. He captured here. Of course, I have to take here. And then I expected this move when I thought, oh, this is amazing because I can come here. He goes this way. I come defend the square. He gets his rook back. But I come here, and this is totally crushing. And, you know, I had made sure that this worked. But what I neglected was that he doesn't play e7. He just takes with check. And now we're here, and we've traded away this weak pawn for my f7 pawn, and I don't feel good about that. That kind of sucks. I mean, I'm still better. My rook is far more active. My king is more active. He has a weak pawn. I don't really have a weak pawn. He can't go just, even if we gave him the move, he can't just go here, because I can just go rook a3. I'm going to attack this, and you probably have to come right back. So I'm not worried about that. But I play king to e6, trying to bring my king further up the board. Oh, I skipped. Let's take a look at this position earlier, see what I should do instead. Because now I think I can take this. And the difference is that if you try to go this d6 maneuver before, now I can take this guy. And if you continue to try to push, I can play rook c4 now. And if you try to come attack this guy, I can still go rook a4. And the difference is in this line, I've won clean material already. And I can continue to try to make a pass pawn. And I can bring my king up. And my king and rook will put pressure here, meaning both rooks need to stay defending this pawn. And this rook will be free to roam around the board and do horrible things to white's position. This would have been a much more solid way to play. But instead, he took, blah, 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 this happens, and I start to advance the king. And here, he's not really sure what to do. I played a5. My plan's clear. I want to make a pass pawn. As soon as this rook moves really anywhere, I'm going to try to bring up the rook. This rook is stuck defending the second rank because I can always give a check and win this pawn. This king can try to come across to the other side, but then it's frozen. So neither one of his pieces are going to do a great job of defending this pawn because the rook is stuck keeping my king out, and it's also stuck defending this pawn, and my rook is making sure that this king can never cross the line. So he chose to play f4. I think this might have been a mistake. I thought that probably better for him would have been to play like h4, g3, and just hang tight. But he decided that he needed to try to create his own pass pawn. So I advanced, and he plays rook over here, which I thought was probably terrible because it lets my king in. So I went here, he brought his king across, and then I started to see ghosts. Of course, this was the plan. But for some reason, I somehow thought that after takes, here, I didn't know how to evaluate this pawn ending. And I tried to calculate it out, but I just kept getting lost in my head. This was really hard about pawn endings calculation, because you just go, I go here, he goes here, I go here, and then you go, damn, where was I? And then you got to start all the way over again. And there's so many variations. And I find like long pawn endings, especially when there's a race, to occasionally be difficult to calculate. But perhaps maybe more cool-headed way of thinking about it is I can just play a4, which is what I had intended in this. And if he tries to, say, get his own pawns, well, this is easy, because now I can just go d4, and I'm threatening, and I can stop his king from coming across. He ever advances, I'll push past, and then the king's totally stuck. So you can't really do that. Say he comes this way. Well, I just maintain the opposition. Say he tries to just waste a move. Well, I know king e4, and he still can't approach these pawns. So got to play king e2. But now a3, and I'm threatening this b3 breakthrough, and the king's got to come back this way. But then b3 can still happen. He takes, and a2, and I'm just breaking through. This really wasn't that complicated, but I didn't want to risk it. So I thought, well, let's play h5. And my idea was like, maybe I'll try to advance this pawn, see if I can get this pawn stuck at h3, and then I can perhaps allow this trade, because my king can come across a little more quickly, I thought. And this was my idea, just to leave these pawns as decoys and try to attack on the king side. He plays here, and again, I should just come in here. That pawn ending totally winning. I chose to play h4, which is okay. It doesn't lose anything. But, after takes, I expected that I would come across to here or here, and I thought I would just mop up all of these pawns. And while he's trying to take care of this, I would continue to crush. So, for example, like this, I thought, king c1 is a move, just trying to get the line across. But, I thought I would take. But the problem is he has rook g2. And yes, he's going to win some pawns. So am I. But this is just a draw. Don't know what would have happened. I might have chose to play a different way, but he chose to play b3. And here I did feel pretty confident about this pawn ending. And I took, he takes, and then I took, now he takes, and I played king e4, totally winning. I thought that I was threatening to come here, I was forcing him to come here. He could never come to this square. I thought I'll just use my waiting move. I'll come in, everything will be great. So this went just like that. I played g6, and look what the eval bar did. This is apparently a dead draw. I have multiple ways to win this. My other idea was I was just going to come here, and he can never come to this square because I have a4. He can't come to this square, so he has to wait, and I thought I'll just come around and win the pawn. And then I thought, well, what difference does it make? I can also just play g6 and come through f3. They seem the same to me. They're not the same. Point is g6. Now here he did play this. I advanced the pawn, and then he resigned. But believe it or not, he has a drawing line. He just goes king to d2, lets me in. I come in. He plays king to d3. Granted, these are only moves. I take. And now the only drawing move, he plays here. Not going after the pawns. Too slow. Much too slow. But now I advance. He advance. I come here. He goes here, just holding the opposition. I try to sneak up to here. Keeps the opposition. I try to come here, just here. And he just follows me around. And my king will never be able to get through. I can try all I want. Well, I can't go there. Here. I go here. He goes here. Oh, now, wait, wrong square. Maybe this would have been a way to try, because d3 is the only square. The difference is that coming here allows me to play a4, because you've advanced too far, and now I can get through. But d3 is enough to hold the draw here. This would have been a pretty fantastic way to ruin things. Luckily, we didn't. So I got the win. So I'm sitting on 3.5 out of 4, and going to go into the next round. It's not clear if I'm still in contention or first, because going into the last round, there was still one person who was on perfect, and I didn't get paired with them. So like my fate was not in my own hands. I needed the guy who got paired against the top seed, or not the top seed, but the guy that was still perfect 4 out of 4. Really needed his opponent to take him to task. And I wasn't sure if that was going to happen or not, but I'm definitely in the running for some money. And I've had a good tournament. I felt pretty good about this game. It felt clean, relatively straightforward. And yeah, I was just happy. And it was good to play a buddy again. Anyhow, thanks a lot, guys, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.